Hi everyone, my name is Mandar and I'm a product designer here at Redgate. Welcome to this virtual Ingeniously Simple meetup that we have today. I'm joined by my co-host Divya. She's here. Divya. Lovely to see all of you. There's about 25 of you now. It's great to have all of you around here. Just a quick introduction about the company. Redgate is the leading provider of database software and has been making ingeniously simple products for 20 years, over 20 years. And we have a large team of product designers and a great user experience, and good product design is integral to how we build products here. So we started these meetups to create a friendly environment, friendly community to learn and share best practices around UX, research and design. We understand that not everyone can attend expensive conferences, so this is sort of like a humble attempt to provide useful content in the design community. We are always looking for speakers, so if you wish to talk or you know someone else who is passionate about talking about a certain UX topic or even like a self-development topic, we would love to host you. We especially welcome first-time speakers and friends from underrepresented communities. So yeah, if you're interested in talking or giving a talk, the best method would be just to contact us through our Twitter page, or you can even contact us through the meetup community. You can just contact me or Divya if you're interested. Today, we are talking about journeys in UX. We will be discussing about different paths, skill sets, and opportunities that our senior designers at Redgate have taken. If you're currently in the world of UX and you're looking to take the next step, I hope this gives you a realistic perspective of how you can pursue your journey. And I hope this is helpful for you. In our panel today, we have Sybil, Howard, Jeremy, and Rob. I'll hand it over to them soon. They'll take turns introducing themselves, and after that, Howard's going to facilitate this discussion. And we'll take any questions from the audience as well. So feel free to drop any questions in the chat window, and we will discuss them after, or we will address them after the discussion. So Howard, I'll just hand it over to you. You can take it forward from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Manda, and thank you everyone else for attending today. I hope you're looking forward to an interesting discussion on skilling up to senior. As Manda says, my name's Howard. I'm a senior product designer at Redgate, and I'm going to be trying to tease out some insights from our lovely panel that we've got here today. We're going to be discussing the topic as a group until 7 o'clock, and then we'll field your questions from the chat. So please put questions into the chat there. Obviously, there are no bad questions, so please just chuck them straight in. So let's introduce the panel. We'll go around the table. So Sybil first, please could you introduce yourself, and then please tell us about your first senior role and how it differed from the previous role and what you were doing, and any expectations you may have had of that role.
Yeah, so I guess it began with a degree in computing visualization, so I knew I was going to go do something within IT and computers, but I did part of it, a lot of it was coding, and then I realized I sucked at coding, or I didn't enjoy it. So I went into web design and got through it that way. And so I was working in kind of web design, marketing, those kinds of roles for a while, until I got a job for a oil comparison website. And that's when I actually made a role for myself where I discovered what UX was. And then I said, I'd like to do this, please, basically. And I kind of did it alongside my actual responsibilities, and then just grew and grew. And then I became a senior there, and then, yeah, moved to Redgate. I mean, before that, I had a couple of leadership positions as well, but more in the traditional kind of graphic design, that kind of arm of design. But in terms of being a product designer, that's when that journey started. And so now I'm at Redgate, working as a product designer. Yeah, so we do SaaS software, which is a completely different ball game to marketing and design. So yeah, that's where I am.
Awesome, thank you. And Rob, please.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Hi, I'm Rob. I've been a product designer at Redgate for about 4 months now in the database DevOps space, and that's around sort of helping customers remove the headaches of making database changes. And I first started in design officially around 12 years ago, when I transitioned from being a software developer. I've done that for about 15, 20 years before then in lots of different businesses. And I'd sort of dabbled in intranet design and web design, doing a bit of print as well. And this was, even before the internet was a thing. I am that old. I was a UX designer at IBM when they made the big transformation to be more design-led. So that was a real privilege. I've worked in lots of different sort of technology areas, including cloud integration, which is really about connecting different applications and services in the cloud with each other, and with older technologies like on database stuff and newer technologies like blockchain and AI. So it's all pretty technical stuff. And I was already at a sort of senior level, but applying that in design was a bit of a mind shift, really, because it was very much about building relationships with lots of different roles and stakeholders, and less about actually being competent in using design tools in isolation as a designer. So it's really about setting up the conversations and having those hard, difficult conversations with lots of different people in different roles, and then trying to make sense of it, and not trying to be an expert in everything, because you can't be. You've got to find the people around you who are better at things than you are, and give them the opportunity to really shine. So to me, being a senior designer is all about being a facilitator, and being the glue to help your team really deliver together. So I'll stop there and hand over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Rob. Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy Vey. I'm a senior product designer at Redgate. Joined the company a bit more than 6 months ago. And I'm working basically as part of a product leadership team on one of our products regarding like cloning set of database. I would say like I've been in design perhaps for like almost 20 years. I think it's like I started in 2003. Aside of my studies as well, I was a freelance designer. I started basically doing marketing campaigns, branding, web design as well back then. And then slowly progressed on the ladder. I was an art director for a small agency in the south of France, moved to the UK and became a design manager in a branding team, to finally basically leading a team in UX and UI digital design, which from them I moved to become a senior product designer for Redgate. So I think I stayed in the field of design for me. Always been there, always working there, but like across multiple different strengths and skill sets. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome, thank you, Jeremy. So I came from a fairly similar place as Sybil and Rob, in the fact that I was a technical. I started off doing development work. I got reasonably far in that, and then decided I preferred design work. So I did a master's in HCI, and then went into working for a consultancy, and then I was promoted to a senior position there. The kind of the main difference, I guess, with the kind of more junior role that I was doing earlier is previously a lot of my work was kind of on rails, like you knew exactly what to do and where you were, but as soon as you were put in a senior position, everything just expanded and became slightly more nebulous, which is one of the key challenges. But what I'm going to do, put out to the panel, is just ask this kind of question: is what to you are the kind of the critical differences a senior position brings with it, and how should we prepare for them if we're in a junior role and we want to move into a senior position? And I'm gonna start with Rob on that one.
Oh, thanks, Harrod. I think one of the big things is, certainly for more sort of technical products, is you have to have a pretty good level of domain knowledge. You're not going to be able to be competent, I don't think, if you don't understand what engineers, product managers, customers are talking about. So you've got to take the time to learn how users are using your products, just so you can build that sufficient understanding of what your customers and users do, and also taking into consideration the way your business runs. What are the drivers for your business? You may not be able to do your perfect design because there are time constraints and money constraints that you need to consider, as well as obviously technical constraints.
Yeah, so we try to understand the much wider context of the products that we're working on. And Sybil, oh, sorry, Jeremy.
No. I didn't know how you wanted to do that. If it was like one after the other.
No, dive in.
Definitely getting the big picture. So like there is a change in focus as well in what the things you're looking at. So when you're more junior, you're more focused on the here and now, perhaps. On very specific and narrow problem solving, which are really essential for the product. But as you move up more to the less tactical aspect of it and more strategical layers to it, then you need to think a bit more broader, like wide and far, basically thinking about the big picture. You're talking about taking into consideration all the different stakeholders, and definitely try also to plan ahead. So like the scalability of your work, the scalability of what you are working on, and definitely the strategy is a big part, I think, of becoming a senior designer.
Yeah, and how do you start forming relationships with the wider kind of group of people you have to interact with?
Well, that's talking. That's what we're doing every day, I think. Like the same way you do with your users or your customers, as you ask them questions. Basically, you like Rob said, you need to rely on their expertise. Knowledge, so really like make a friend, basically. Start understanding what's their position, what's their deal. They have also their own pressure within the company. They need to report to someone, they need to manage other teams. So understanding all those aspects will really help you, start to link, relationships and strengths as well in those relationships, I think.
Yeah, I think when you become more senior, that kind of naturally happens as well. Like when I was trying to remember back when I was a junior, and I took all my energy just concentrating on how to become better at my craft, that the communication was kind of like a side step. But then once you get good at your craft, you can kind of go, like the way I differentiate it is that when you're a junior, when you can kind of give it a good bash, you can kind of give it a go, and you think that that's like a good standard. That's when you kind of you know the basics, and when, and then you get to a stage when when you can break the rules of those basic design rules. And so when your mind kind of goes to that area, then your mind can do using your circle of influence, let's say. So communication with the stakeholders, communications with other teams, communications with other departments, and so your brain is stretched in a different form. That's what I found.
And how would you recommend peers in a junior position? How would you recommend they kind of prepare for that? Is there anything we can do to give ourselves the best possible start at that aspect of a senior role?
So prepare for basically, I think it just happens naturally. I'm just trying to think about my own experience. So as long as you're kind of open to that communication coming in and not kind of focusing, going, I've got to get better and better at doing what I'm doing, kind of trust yourself, trust your own level of expertise to a degree, and go, right, I know this, and that's why I can concentrate on other things. So I think part of it is also a confidence thing, and that grows as your knowledge grows. What do you think, Howard?
I actually had to put myself in painful positions so that I could actually learn some of those behaviours. So to kind of get out of your comfort zone and actually, even though you're not ready for them, try and get yourself in a senior position, like a situation where a senior would typically deal with, such as managing a project or an initiative, or managing a relationship with a client, or or maybe even like mentoring someone, or that kind of thing. That kind of had to get out of my comfort zone. Otherwise, I would just felt like I'd be doing the kind of the same things forever. So So it might not be that, you know, this kind of senior position stuff would land on your lap. You had to kind of bust your way into it to a certain extent, especially if you didn't want to move. If you're enjoying the company that you're working in, you didn't necessarily want to change company. You'd have to kind of elbow your way in almost to a certain extent. I don't know if anyone else has any experience of doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had secret projects that nobody knew about. I don't know whether or not other people had those kinds of things, but they're always like, oh, I know that there's a better way to do it, so I'm going to just secretly work on this thing. And then, you know, not for kind of like to surprise people going, oh, how great am I, but it's more of a kind of exercise, I guess, in stretching your boundaries. But yeah, I definitely think you have to push something out of your remit, definitely.
Yeah, I think being out of your comfort zone is the only way you're going to learn anything. Yeah, there is always that risk that you're going to screw things up, but if you don't try, you'll never know. So it is worth trying, you know, new types of methods, getting different people in the room, and inevitably you will learn something. Moving on, because this thing is very dynamic. Nothing ever stops. And then that builds up your reputation for being somebody who's pushing the boundary all the time as well.
Yeah, rely on that, definitely. I think it's interesting, but I keep fostering that curiosity. Like when you start to think about why you're doing what you're doing, that's perhaps when you like can be a bit more like you can be ready basically to become a senior. It's like when you start thinking a bit beyond just the regular task, etc. When you figure out also like how you might do things a bit differently, as you said, Sybil, for instance. So really stretching, pushing those boundaries can help.
Yeah, so there's two kind of mindset things we've discussed, isn't there? There's the focus on the tools and the craft that we have as maybe more junior physicians, and we need to kind of say, well, okay, that's what it is, but now we need to widen our perspectives. And there's also this kind of mindset thing about I need to put myself in positions where things might be uncomfortable and I might have the opportunity to fail, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. What other kind of mindset shifts do we think are required to work well in a senior position?
I think it's about recognizing the other people on your team and within your project, finding, understanding what their skills and expertise are, especially when it's, when they're more competent than you are, and being that enabler and feeder to those people to make sure they're being given opportunities to really shine. Because, we're all these sort of T-shaped people. We've probably got one or two, sort of specialisms, but everything else is, quite generalized. But there are going to be other people in your team that are, really good at what they do. And you don't need to try and be good at everything. You can enable the rest of your team to raise the sort of quality level of the outcomes. Yeah,
that has been one of the hardest things in my for me when I moved to the senior leadership, is like understanding that. So like it's not only you and your work, it's very much more like cross collaborative, and you're not the one neither really like taking the full lead. It's an opportunity to actually like bring all the people and level the game up a little bit. Really, some humility and authenticity can help.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think as I got more senior, I got more honest. And I don't know whether or not that comes along with confidence or whatever, but it's like, I think when you're junior, kind of going, oh yes, I'll definitely do that, and but then you start to question things, and then you kind of go. And actually it's got to a point where when I was younger, this is just a personal thing, I kind of avoided confrontation in general. But actually as a senior, I actually kind of like it in a civil kind of way. Do you know what I mean? Like in a professional way, like actually enjoying civil discourse and seeing what difference of opinion there is around. Whereas before I would have kind of avoided it and gone, oh, what can I do to actually make everyone happy as a designer? How can I fulfill everyone's needs? You
have to get kind of comfortable with duking it out a little bit, don't you, sometimes?
Yeah, exactly. even amongst like other designers, because
Yes,
we've all got our own points of view and tastes and everything, and what we're trying to achieve. It's about holding your own, I guess, as well. Yeah.
So there's definitely some challenges around kind of understanding people and their motivations, and your team's motivations, and understanding the strengths and the weaknesses of the various components within your team, and also dealing with conflict and being able to embrace it to a certain extent and not be afraid of it, which is, I guess, when I was a junior, I was like, oh, I'll write everything down and I'll go away and do everything people ask me to and stuff like that. But as you kind of develop, you get this kind of wider kind of understanding of what you should do and maybe what you should park. Which is, there's another key challenge as well there, isn't there? Which is how do you prioritize the slew of new things that are kind of coming at you when you would move into a senior role? It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
I want to start.
Yeah, go for it. Go.
Oh,
it's a difficult question, I know. Sorry.
It is.
All the difficult questions that you guys. I'm sorry.
No, it's really good. It's really good. I think if I look back at my experience, to me, it's looking at it as a set of problems. So it's like you need to weight basically all the different components, and also find also the interdependencies. So you think, like I said, you need to think a bit more like broader, a bit more holistically. So that means actually you got a little different parts that need to take into consideration. And if you move, the part on the right hand side, then that may disrupt, the part on the left hand side. And there's this notion of scalability. So by what do you start? I would say it's like the most, foundational pieces of work basically that are required. And oftentimes it goes back to the basics, right? So it's like, do you have good principles for your design? Do you have good heuristics for that? Do you have like a clear vision, a clear strategy? Because after that, once you get those big, theme in place, everything can roll out more naturally, I think. But I don't know what's your side of this experience, Sybil and Rob.
I think the thing that drives me, and the question I keep on asking, is how does this benefit the end user? Is it going to move me forward to something closer to satisfying those users' needs? And if it isn't, then we need to push it down the list.
And how do you balance that with what the business is trying to do and the outcome it's trying to get, and what the capability is within the organization as well? How do you kind of grapple with those three forces?
Well, inevitably you have to accept that you are going to have to make some compromises. You won't ever achieve the perfect design by going through every single possible activity or method that you would prefer to try or use. Sometimes you have to go with MVP or even less than that, just to move the needle forward a little bit, and then make a mental note that you may get an opportunity to come back to it if that item is high enough priority. But there will always be many other items to work on, and obviously business pressures.
Yeah, that comes back to that kind of mindset expansion, doesn't it? Where you're moving out of your kind of your piecemeal work and your kind of quite directed work, and you're going into this situation where you've got to make judgments based on your understanding of what the team can do, what the business can do, what the business wants, and what your audience would effectively like to use and would be able to use, which is quite a difficult calculation. Are there any tools and methods that can help us do this, and that maybe juniors could investigate and look at, and it would give them a sense of what they might be going into and how they would make those decisions? Sybil, I'm going to throw that one at you.
So just to clarify the question, some kind of things to help what to prioritize.
Yeah, so whether it's like workshops or online tools or anything, what's in the seniors tool belt effectively? What are they using and
yeah, I mean,
driving?
I was considering this kind of question and before, and I kind of was thinking, you know, a senior in different organizations means different things, and it all depends on what you're good at as well. And for me personally, because I can only talk about myself, I'm quite good at the kind of workshopping, that part of design. So anything that kind of aligns vision between team members and product managers and other designers is where I try to naturally gravitate towards. It's kind of whiteboarding work and stuff like that. Yeah, there's like loads of design thinking type exercises that you can do. You know, there's gosh, they've come out of my head now. What they are. You know, vision mapping, effort impact mapping, all these things. To try and like kickstart a project and create some kind of vision of what we should be working on, story mapping. So I mean, that's where I kind of start, anyway, at least. In terms of moving from a junior to senior, it definitely became more strategic by using those tools and techniques, and less concentrating on like the output, as it were.
Yeah.
Are we traveling in the right direction rather than what should it look like? I guess that's. But yeah. Like I like this is the thing. This is what it looks like for me, at least. It could be completely different in another organization. You know, I think some organizations really. You can be a senior in the craft sense. You know, be really good at Figma, and yeah. It depends.
It's a great question, actually, which we haven't really tackled, isn't it? Is what really defines a senior role? It'd be good to hear the panel's thoughts on that. Sybil, you know, your answer about it becomes more strategic on presumably a product or a design level. But what does the rest of the panel think about that?
I think it's being able to keep the whole design process for your product or your project in mind all the time, and keeping everybody on track about you know, what we've completed to a satisfactory level, and you know, where the uncertainties and unknowns are, because there will be many at the beginning, and that, you know, it's probably going to take several iterations before you can get enough confidence in each of the different areas that you can actually do, you know, start creating the design artifacts. So one of the things that, you know, I do try and, you know, prefer to do is to keep the sort of overall picture of, you know, what have we done and what have we not done or don't know about yet, and making sure that everybody on the team is aware of, you know, that sort of journey through the process. Because if you've got stuff squirreled away in lots of different documents in different locations, no one will know exactly where that project is. So just, you know, really just being very open, you know, expose all the artifacts that you're producing on the way, just make them accessible to everyone, you know, even beyond design.
Yeah. And you made a really good point earlier about kind of being the glue in the process, like and making sure that the team is being fed the right things to do, or is coming to the right conclusions, or at least is coming to a conclusion that as a group they can get behind and drive.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, a bit the same. Yeah, actually, I mean, I would be careful with, you know, job title is just a job title. What's important is what's underneath, is like the definition, the role and responsibilities. Ultimately, that's what that's where you can have like a lot of differences from a company to another. But ultimately, if you are at a senior level, I would say definitely, you know, some kind of vision alignment that's, you know, supposed to act as well as a glue. So if everyone can share, you know, the same understanding of the problem that has to be solved or the opportunity that has to be explored, and understand a bit of the direction to move forward, then you can, you know, create a good synergy as well amongst your colleagues and stakeholders in order to be more impactful in your work. So yeah, kind of aligned with what Rob said and Sybil. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know I've done I've done senior roles where like it's just you working on a project and you don't necessarily have like a collaboration within a project. And so a senior role there meant quite a different thing. I think there was less of this kind of orchestration and alignment and strategy, and more about actually being really solid at delivering quite a complex thing in a repeatable way, which is a very, very different track. They kind of, it's very difficult to get across from one to the other, I'd imagine. Once you got comfortable going one way, it'd be quite difficult to do it the other. I mean, how should people in junior roles, how should they weigh up senior position opportunities, given that there's kind of different kind of ways they can go? Like what could they look for to kind of analyze them and see if there's a good fit?
I would say it depends what you want. There's so many ways you can progress. And again, also it may depend on the opportunity you will find out there. So different companies will provide different opportunities to grow in their organization. Like Sybil said, you can probably like be really good at your craft. And that's one way to progress, but the other way is also to progress more on the leadership and managerial side. And perhaps you can find like 10 different other ways really to do that. So I would say go back to the basic, go back to why are you enjoying doing this job, right? What's the purpose, right, in your life, therefore? And if you can align it with your career, then that's a good win, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and also asking those people, or getting them to ask themselves whether they enjoy and embrace the opportunities they have from talking to other people in different roles and in customer organizations, and knowing that some of those conversations are going to be pretty, or can be pretty difficult. I know I can recall pretty clearly a situation in a previous company, working with a very difficult person who was just criticizing all the design decisions that were being made. And the natural thing to do is just to sort of shrink away and avoid that person. But actually, what I did was had a private chat with them and said, okay, well, why is it that you're being so critical of everything that's happening? And what it reveals is that actually there's a reason behind it. They know something that you don't. They have criteria that you may not have thought about, and just having that conversation will sort of really open up that channel to somebody who can add something to your project. And the end result of that was that person, who was a pretty senior technical person, participated in weekly design sessions with all of the designers to explain things from their perspective about the pressures they were under from an implementation point of view. So understanding that you are going to have these confrontational type situations, but they are definitely opportunities to build bridges right through your organization, and going forward you're going to be really well respected.
It's kind of like there's no escape from even if you go down kind of the individual route, but highly skilled and highly tuned, there's still no escape from those difficult conversations when you start to go up the career ladder.
Yeah, I think inevitably at some point. Yeah, go on, Sybil.
Oh no, I was just going to say, there's always going to be politics wherever you are. There's always going to be, and it's kind of going to be inevitable. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, and it has to be something you engage with, and you almost actively seek out. As Rob was saying, you have to be prepared to really crack things open and find out what's really going on inside them, not be kind of reticent about it or anything like that.
So a way to think about that is basically try to transform the friction into momentum. Right?
Oh, I love it.
Write that one down, Jeremy.
Yeah, I've broken the camera there by saying that. So.
Mic drop. Oh, yeah, definitely. Tell us more about that, Jeremy. Tell us more about that.
Well, it's I think so. Like Rob said, you get some dynamics basically already going on, right? And it's a good thing that there is dynamic in an organization, but sometimes this dynamic can conflict with It's like the jet streams basically colliding into another stream of air and then creates like a cyclone or something like that. But you can eventually also, reverse basically the energy. You will find that basically those problems sometimes you have conflict with, it's just because they have perhaps a different perception of the problem you're working on. So there is a problem of alignment here. They probably have some problems as well going on in their life. Maybe they are, bothered by their bosses, their own like direct manager, or maybe something is not going well at work and somehow like they're taking it on you. So the idea is really much like you would do basically when you chat with your users, try to understand what's going on in their life, try to solve their problems. Well, do the same with your colleagues, do the same with them, really, because you're on the same boat. And if the machine inside your organization is well oiled because of that, then the outcome is going to be very beneficial for the end users. It's a bit of service design approach, but you do it just by relationship ultimately.
Awesome.
That's enough. I can go on for hours.
Awesome. So we've talked about some of the mindsets. We talked about some of the kind of tools that are in our tool belt. Is there anything else we could develop if we're in a junior role? Is there anything else we can develop that's kind of critical for our success if we move into a senior position?
Yeah, I would think for me, what's been helpful is getting an understanding of cognitive and behavioral, sciences. So basically how human brains is working. We all flawed. Again, that's related to what I said before. Like, don't take it personally if sometimes, you get conflict coming at you. It's not that the person is necessarily bad or evil or really want to smash your career. It's sometimes just because we are human. So understanding those flaws, understanding the biases that we've got, not only is helpful like at work when you want to form relationship with your colleagues and stakeholders, but also as a UX designer, it's really essential. I think it's really foundational to have those skills.
And should we learn how to manage people in the classic sense? What do we feel about kind of line management and stuff like that? Should a senior person be doing that kind of stuff, or what? I'll throw that out to anyone as well.
Yeah, I've never really seen it as sort of management, as in sort of directing other people. To me, it's more about making sure you've got the best person for the job doing that job, and giving them the opportunity to do what they're good at, because you definitely can't do it all, and what you want to encourage is getting to the point where people will naturally gravitate towards those areas that that they're good at. So it becomes much more hands off.
Sybil, what else could we develop beyond mindsets and kind of tooling? What else is critical to success in the senior role, do you think?
I think that UX and product design has moved on so much since I started. So I think when I started, there was such a battle to go through actually making people listen to users. Actually, that hopefully doesn't exist so much anymore. What with Steve Jobs being very user-centric and Jeff Bezos as well. So I mean, like there isn't that battle there, but I think that the thing that kind of pushed me to becoming a better senior is so I'm not sure if anybody's heard of Shipler's 5 laws of stupidity. I'm not sure if anybody's heard this.
You have to remember those 5 laws now.
There's 5 laws, but it's like a quadrant basically where you where there's where you kind of you kind of map yourself in whether or not you're doing a stupid thing or whatever, and this it basically says that if you do things that help other people but don't help yourself, then you're kind of being self-sabotaging, I guess. So kind of choosing things that help yourself and help others. That's kind of like where I kind of shifted when I was a junior. I kind of did things that kind of helped my progression and also helped the company at the same time. You know, it can be a win-win situation. And when I kind of found that framework, it really helped me. Really. But
yeah, that's a really, really good point. It's kind of moving away from that kind of subservient, for want of a better word, mindset you might have as in kind of a junior position, and actually being more demanding of the organization that you work for, and being more demanding of those situations.
Yeah, just to be clarify, I'm not saying juniors are in this stupid area.
No. Yeah. No. But you know what I mean. You're desperate to please, aren't you? You kind of, you know your position isn't necessarily super strong. As when you're in your early steps of your career, you kind of have to get on with a lot of stuff that maybe you don't necessarily want to do, but you've got to do it because that's what you've kind of signed up for. But
yeah, and there's always going to be that time in your life when you have to do that. Like when you learn to write, you're gonna have to learn the alphabet, and you're gonna have to learn how to make sentences, right? And like this, it's a gradual thing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
How about oh, sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to jump back on your question on management as well. I think someone said earlier it's about like positioning. I think it was you positioning yourself as a mentor, perhaps as well, is a good way to move forward, because ideally you want basically to create an opportunity for people to learn, develop, and grow themselves. So you can do that directly. You can do that by fostering an environment as well that sounds safe. So like. Feel free to experiment and fail, right? Like how might you help, your team do that, or yourself doing that, and fostering the right space basically for people to get inspired and really unlock their potential. I think that's the way I will look management, more as like the old formal ways of managing administratively, I would say, more humanly.
Yeah. I mean, I had a management position where I was essentially grooming the backlog. Like the backlog would just ever increase, and I would have to try and get these things done, basically. So there wasn't much of a human element to it, as you say. So in terms of seniority, it's one of those things where you get paid for stress as well as responsibility. And I think that a lot of organizations, some organizations work that way. Some of them, some others are more about kind of more like you're in charge of the decision making, and you're held responsible for any failures that happen. And trying to put yourself into a healthy environment is always encouraged, I think.
Yeah, that's a great one, isn't it? I guess I don't know about anyone else, but when I first moved into a senior position, the shock of the stress was quite, it was something I noticed. And depending on the environment you go into, then it might be quite supportive, or it might be quite, you might be expected just to deal with it. So as someone who's looking to move into a senior role, are there any suggestions we can make on how they could kind of any tips for kind of managing those kind of new pressures that they might have as in a senior position?
Don't take it personally. That's the first tip. Like, otherwise you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah, so that's like a thick skin, isn't it? Yeah,
and also just keep talking to your colleagues. If you are under any kind of pressure and you feel like you may be failing in some areas, be open about it to your peers and say what your pressures are, because they will more than likely step in and help you out, or say, how about you try this, or actually we can park this for a while, we don't need to worry about this right now, and that can help take the pressure off.
Yeah, asking for help, it's good.
How did you develop resilience, Sybil? How did you kind of
I'm going to be very honest here, and not that I haven't been honest the whole time, but I essentially, after that, I kind of ran away from, it was so stressful. I had a bit of time out from being a manager, So I actually kind of I don't know, settled myself, I guess. But in terms of resilience, I guess what I did, I was kind to myself and said, look, you know, you've learned something from this, and having a game plan for if it happens again, and to know what to look out for, and not to put yourself into that situation again. Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, if I was going to talk to my younger self, I would have definitely said, you don't have to do everything. Like, I think I felt the need to kind of please everyone, and because I felt like I had to be a bit of a umbrella for my team, to protect them, because you do feel kind of a responsibility for being a kind of a mother hen kind of figure. But at the same time trying to do what the business asks of you, and that's a hard thing. But I think I would have been more honest to my senior managers if I'd have said anything to my younger self. And in terms of resilience, I think that, yeah, like just forgiving yourself is a long life journey, really. I think that's
yeah, so you have to develop this ability to kind of be kinder to yourself, perhaps, because things get a bit, you know, when you're in the junior position, things are kind of a bit on rails a bit. You know, people will manage you so that you more often than not do what you need to do successfully. But when you move out into that senior role, there's less of that. So you have to be kinder to yourself, because things will go wrong, and you know, it won't always be plain sailing. It won't always be plain sailing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely found myself, because I think I was hard. I think I was hard on myself and hard on other people as well.
Yes,
as a mirror image.
I've also done that.
And then I became kinder to myself and then kinder to other people. So it's weird how that kind of pans out. And I think that's how I became resilient, more resilient at least.
So for you, it's less about kind of developing a thick skin that things bounce off, and more about kind of accepting things and then being accepting of everything else, and kind of
be like water,
nice.
like Bruce Lee. There's water, my friend.
I think you realise that you can't possibly be perfect. You can't possibly deliver that perfect product, and certainly in software design and development, it's going to change in 6 months anyway. So there's no point burning yourself out on, you know, sort of tiny, picky decisions. Some of these things you're just going to have to live with and shrug it off. You know, it will never be perfect. And I've certainly spent way too many years trying to get every I dotted and every T crossed, and looking back, it just certainly wasn't worth it.
What about difficult clients? I mean, this is also part of being a manager, in handling difficult clients. Are there any tips or hints, or do we just have to dump the difficult clients on our subordinates and let them get on with them?
That's a great question. We should field that one in a minute, actually, because we've got a couple more minutes left, but we'll field that question. That's a really good one. Hopefully one of us can formulate an answer in the next five minutes. Well, I just want to kind of wrap things up this bit with kind of one question to each of the, same question to each of the panel, which is, if imagine you were a junior and you were going into an interview for a senior role, you know, what are the three things you must prepare for that position, for that interview to give you the best chance of being given the job?
I think bringing some evidence of where you have put yourself on the line, where you have been a bit more proactive about building relationships that you wouldn't normally do, that take you out of your comfort zone, and you know, communicating what you learn from that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we said definitely like showing basically how how you did grow basically in your practice and in your position, like, you know, showing how you've learned something. It's all right to show as well things that have failed actually, because that's where you learn the most, I think, sometimes. And the idea is to show how you therefore avoid, you know, to fall into the same trap the next time, is sometimes really interesting. And if you can demonstrate like a progression and a growth like that, I think that can help you.
I mean, I think as long as you can, like you have a whole bunch of things in your toolbox to kind of grab as a senior. So as a senior, you've gained all of these things that you can draw upon to create the best solution, or the best way to kind of tackle a problem. That your ability to actually draw upon all those different things that you've learned along the way is something that needs to be, I guess, shown during the interview somehow. It's like your breadth of your knowledge and depth, but the fact that you've come across all of these instances, and this is how you did, this is how you dealt with it, or if I was going to do it, this is how I would deal with it. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I had a really nice analogy for that the other day, which was like it's like creating a treasure chest and being able to show that you can reach in and there's some really good stuff in there that have kind of formed from your experiences and the things that you go through. I mean, what should a junior maybe have in their portfolio for that kind of interview, and how should they talk about it, do we think?
Things you could measure is always best, but it's not necessarily easy sometimes at a junior level, because you may just work on tiny little part, and so it's hard to, you know, gauge basically how much of your work has been, you know, the most impactful for the whole project. So perhaps I would say, like, perhaps you can play on the collaboration side. You can play on, you know, what Rob and Sybil has said, basically, like demonstrate, you know, show that you came across this, you came across that, and then next time you did it differently. And so if you can demonstrate that in your portfolio, like I say, again, you can show, you know, the stuff that's been thrown into the trash can. That is not a problem. You can also show your side project work. I think it's all right as well. Say, like, all right, well, I've been asked to do X, Y, Z. I didn't thought it was the thing to do, so I did a little bit differently on my side. Proposed that it didn't went as far as I was expected, but here's my solution. And so that gives, you know, to the person in front of you in the interview an ability to judge your work like that. Definitely, that's been helpful for me.
So it's less about the kind of the finished article and the ta-da moment and this is what was built, but it's more about what was the journey like, the process, to get there? Yeah. What was that?
Yeah. I think it's important to show that you can, you know, that you understand your creative process, you understand basically your design process, you own it, and you show that you demonstrate that by all these little like learning and improvements that you're making along the way.
Tell that story and show that sort of design journey that includes input from technical, from business, and from customers. That when you have hit obstacles, how you've overcome them, and who you've talked to, and how that helped you make that decision that got you moving again.
Awesome. Would the panel like to add any kind of closing thoughts, or are we good? It feels like we covered quite a lot of stuff in there, and hopefully we've generated some good stuff for questions coming up. But unless anyone wants to chip in anything else, then I'll hand back to Mandar and say thank you very much, panel, for being so awesome.
Thank you. I want to add just one thing, because you don't have to, you know, follow that ladder, that hierarchical ladder, etc. Find your bliss, really. That's what's important. I've seen so many people being, you know, like accepting jobs and at higher position, etc., and not being pleased with that because they were out of touch with some other aspects of their job. So if your thing is really craftsmanship, well, try to find a way to develop and build that craftsmanship. Really find your own purpose and align your career with that. It doesn't matter if you're senior, if you're junior, whatsoever, as long as you're enjoying what you're doing. That's what's the most important.
Yeah, and what it comes down to, and I think we've reflected that in the last hour, is that it's not so much about the design skills, it's more about people skills and building those relationships. And the more strong relationships you can build with people in lots of different areas, the more fun and enjoyable your job's going to be. So that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, connected to that, like in terms of accelerating, if you're like, I felt like my career accelerated quite a lot when I started networking outside of where I was. So in fact it can actually probably be used as a tool to combat kind of like this requirement for years of service, as it were. So it's like the more people you talk to outside of it will like it expands your horizons, and you don't necessarily have X amount of years for being a product designer, but the more you talk to other product designers and other companies and look for opportunities there and get in touch with communities like this one as well, that's when definitely my career accelerated as well. So
awesome, thank you so much. Thank you. I'll hand back to Amanda now.
Yeah, thank you all of you. It was really great. So many new tips, especially for someone who started his career like a few months ago. It's amazing to like have so much insight given to me in this short 1 hour. So it's great. Thank you all of you. So what we're going to do now is we'll take questions from the audience. I would encourage you to speak up, or if you feel like if you feel better just typing it in chat, you can do that as well. We've got a few questions already, but we'll start with that. Yes, sorry, Sybil. Sybil has to go. So
yeah, I'm really sorry. No further.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sybil. If there are any questions for you, we'll send it over to you.
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
But yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sybil.
Thank you so much, Andy. Right, bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye, everyone. Good luck with it.
Should we start with the question that was asked by Peter, was it? So I think he mentioned that dealing with customers is also an important aspect as you skill up. So what are your thoughts around that?
Is Peter still on the call?
No, I don't think so.
Because what I wanted to ask him was, how does he define what a difficult customer is? Because it could be about them being difficult to contact, or they don't respond, or it could be they're particularly critical about designs or about
they won't commit, things like that.
Yeah.
I guess we can just talk about it generally. What would you do if you have some as a customer who is difficult to contact, or it's not quite clear what they want? How do you deal with that?
I mean, I've done a few kind of external customer facing roles. And I think the first thing is you shouldn't be doing that on your own. You shouldn't be the person who is managing that relationship with the customer. You might be part of a team that's doing it, but if you work for kind of a fairly regular organization, it won't be you doing that on your own, because although that is a skill that you should learn, it's not necessarily one that the organization is expecting you to be the expert at. But that said, if you're doing kind of design work for customers, you will have to sell your work to those customers, or sell the work of the team to those customers externally. And again, it comes down to this bit of a stuck broken record, but it's about working out ways to best communicate the work, the reasons why the work is what it is, why they should accept it, why it's closer to being done than it was a week ago, all those kind of things. And basically you want to be persuasive, honest, and also want to kind of stay ahead of their expectations as much as you can. And then you kind of head off the difficult client at the pass as it were, to a certain extent. You just jump ahead of it, and they never become the difficult client because you've delivered what you said you would in the timescales that you said you would, or you've managed their expectations effectively through good communication.
Yeah, and I think you can spend time playing back your understanding of what they're saying to you, if it's a criticism or something else. But you can also preempt and avoid these kinds of situations by including that user or that customer up front in your project as part of the design process. I know certainly in IBM, in the IBM design thinking process, they have this role of sponsor user where they do have customers actively part of the entire end-to-end design process. So they can't really criticize because they're part of the design. So I think building up that relationship with your customer up front, and as you said, Howard, it's not just you. You're going to have account managers there. You're going to have technical backup. Hopefully you can answer all of their concerns.
Yeah, that was a bit of an aha moment. When I was doing that, was involving the client in the design process, even if the stuff that came out of it was, objectively not what you would necessarily build, but it was at least an idea of their vision. That made them much more comfortable with the process going forward.
Sometimes starting with the brief as well. I've done a lot of freelance design and in the past and early in my career, and definitely, like, if you just let the client create his own brief, then there is 99% of chance that this goes wrong because they're really not good. We're not, like, each of us are really not good to define our own problems. Other people are better to see basically what problems we have. So, like, it's a dialogue that needs to happen constantly from day one. And you have much more chance to, like, have a coherent approach and a cohesive and impactful outcome.
Yeah, customers don't often know actually what they want to achieve.
That's the horses.
A great answer. One of the questions we have is how many UX designers minimum can work on a project or a company?
Depends how big the project is.
You would just spread yourself as thinly as created some kind of value, wouldn't you? I guess what's underneath that might be something like there aren't enough of us or something, or yeah.
I mean, it is very much a how long is a piece of string type question, isn't it? Because it could be, are you just working on one interface in one format, or are you trying to produce multiple user interfaces on mobile? Are they native? Is it web? Are you doing API design? There's so many different factors here. And how many?
He just said multi-device, preferably.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah, and also that there's the time aspect of it as well. If you want to, I mean, you can't, just throwing more people at it doesn't necessarily mean delivering faster, but it does have some influence. You can achieve anything with one UX designer if you've got enough time, but the reality is you're not going to do that. But
so which part of the process we're talking here? So if I understand, like, Ardalan, I don't know if you asked this question, but if it's about the production of design, so like prototyping and creating interfaces and things like that, well, if it's across multiple devices, I would encourage you to start coding it as opposed to design it by hand. So, like, having your component already coded as, like, responsive components. So Howard can also share a little bit on that because you worked on that recently, I think. But that would speed up as opposed to design each screen separately. I think you would burn yourself through that. Yeah.
Has anyone heard that expression? You need N+1 bicycles, which isn't. I think it's probably the same. I think as a designer, you'll always feel like there aren't enough of you. I guess coming back to some of the points that we discussed earlier, it's about being able to prioritize within and being able to see out of all this stuff that's coming at you, being able to pick the things that will move you forward, regardless of the fact that there might not be enough bodies to do the stuff in the time that perhaps some people want or whatever. It's about being able to prioritize and show that you're making the right decisions, and then also being able to make sure that the team, you can outsource some of that work to the team if you're in one, because you won't suffer alone, and you certainly shouldn't. So yeah,
it makes me think of focus. Focus is about saying no, right? So it's like you narrow your focus to doing one thing and you say no to the other. So if you're talking about multi-devices, which one, for instance, is the most used in your marketplace, and then start with that. Perhaps that's a way of prioritizing. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Divya has a question. Divya?
Yes. So give me a second. I've just lost that one. We've got a question from Hamza. I hope I'm saying your name right. Hamza asks, will UX and product management really merge? Any questions or any suggestions or opinions on how to find a middle ground that works for both?
Ooh.
I didn't realize that was even a possibility of merging UX design and product management. I think there's enough on each role's plate to worry about taking on sort of business dimension of it.
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would be possible, in like a very kind of small early stage type thing, where you're kind of like you're trying to create like a new product, and you're not certain enough of it yet. So someone takes on both the role of the product manager and the product designer, simply because it's not worth investing money to have enough people to have two people on it. But in kind of certainly for Redgate, Redgate, our product managers are very close to the business side of things. So the numbers and the marketing and the sales and the long-term kind of user needs and the long-term kind of market trends, and the product designers are very close to the engineering teams. And you couldn't do both of those jobs. You'd die trying.
Yeah, I think it might work on a very small project or a small company, but for much bigger software projects, I don't think that's feasible. But that's just my opinion.
We've got Peter back. He was still want to answer the question. You want to ask him again, Rob? What do you mean?
Yeah, hi Peter. So about your question about working with difficult customers. How would you define a difficult customer?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of feedback, but I can hear you.
Well, it's just that I was on a UX call earlier this week with guys in Edinburgh, and they said that they had difficult clients and that they usually walked away from them or pass them to a more junior colleague to deal with. And I just wondered if that scenario was good practice, or any ideas around it.
Well, it'd be interesting to understand why they walked away from them. What were they being difficult about?
I think it's mainly about collaborating on projects.
Yeah, I think. I've worked with a few clients where they felt that they could hand over a brief and it was left to the designer to come up with the goods, or design team to come up with the goods without any participation on their part. And I think it's the responsibility of the design team to set the expectations that they do expect collaboration with that client to get the best possible outcome. And if they don't want to collaborate, then perhaps walking away is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think if an organisation is attracting difficult clients or has a problem with difficult clients, it's kind of a signal that they aren't they aren't reaching the people they should or they want to, and maybe that's something you should consider when engaging with them, whether that was going for a job or whether that was a collaboration or whatever. If they've got problems with difficult clients, then it's not a great signal.
Yeah, I don't think that delegating that to a more junior person is going to help necessarily. Although like having a different person sometimes can help. That I agree, because we're all human again, so we might imagine the person in front of us as the one who's creating the conflict. So if you shift that, suddenly the person in front of you may be more open to collaborate. But to a more junior without any support, I feel like that's doomed to failure to me. Yeah.
I have a question. Thank you for the insightful answers as well to the questions. So obviously you can sort of take the agency path and then the in-house path, and you're doing the same role, but they're also quite different, right? UX designer in an agency would be very different to a UX designer in-house in some respects. I was wondering, whether or not you've had experience in this, or you've spoken to people who have gone down the path of going from junior to senior in agency versus going from junior to senior in-house. And perhaps, to kind of build upon that answer, what are some of the different qualities that you have to show to progress in those different environments?
You and your good question. I can have a go if anyone else. Well, I'll give it a quick go. Okay, the differences. I think the way that agencies work has changed quite a lot. Like when I worked for agencies, it was like the agency would sell a project to a company, and the agency would work on the project internally and then deliver the thing, and everyone would be happy and make loads of money and drink a lot. It's crazy. Whereas now agencies will typically kind of place their staff inside other companies. So they get kind of subsumed into, they're less working for a client and more working for kind of like an internal part of the business. So it's actually not as different as you might expect from working in-house than perhaps it was. So some of the skills are, still, a lot of it's still super relevant for, what makes you work well in-house will make you work well in that situation too. I think what's kind of specific to kind of the agency, that kind of model, is that you've effectively got two masters, which is really hard. So you've got your kind of the people who are paying you and the people who are paying the people who are paying you, and so you've got to kind of you've got to balance that kind of. You've got to be a bit. You might end up having to be a little bit more dispassionate about things and a little bit more kind of a bit more of a kind of an operator, a smooth operator, which may or may not be a good thing for you. I don't know. So largely similar, but if you're put into that model, but you will have to be a slightly different kind of animal to really do well in that situation. I think what would help you in those situations, if you can kind of develop skills to kind of understanding the competing interests of the two masters that you have effectively, and work out ways of kind of balancing those competing interests, and be even better at kind of soaking things up, because it might be coming from two different directions. But I mean, I don't want to kind of rubbish the agency model or anything. It's really good fun. You drink a lot. Sorry, you do, for reasons. You make some really great friends. But yeah, it can be a little bit more stressful than kind of working for an in-house company.
You've certainly got time pressures that you need to keep on top of all of the time, because you the rest of your sales team is going to be lining up more client work down the road, so you have to finish by a certain deadline. So you don't have that luxury of, oh, yeah, things have been delayed. Yeah, let's defer some of the decisions we have to make, or some of the designs we have to produce. You have to deliver reliably. So there is that pressure. But in some ways, that discipline can really help. When you're working in house, you have that. There's less time constraint, but there's more pressure on you from the sort of wider business, is what I found anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. When you're in house, you're expected to. Sorry, in house, it's a horrible expression, but you know what I mean. When you're you're doing that, you're expected to contribute to the success of the business in a wider context as well, such as training other people or recruitment or marketing or that kind of thing. Whereas when you're part of an agency, the delivery is key, and kind of almost everything else is slightly second fiddle to that. So yeah, and you've also got to learn how to sell to a certain extent as well, haven't you? You've got to be you've got to sense opportunities for how can I help my employer sell more work to this organization that we're working with now, because that's one of the things that will get you promoted in an agency, rightly or wrongly.
I think Divya's got another question from Hamza.
Yeah, thank you, Hamza, for giving us more information on that. So Hamza's question really was about the merge between project management and UX, and what she's clarified is it's more than whether the roles and domains would merge. How can junior UXers can understand the divide?
Ooh.
If I can, it's not project management. I was referring to product management, because a lot of my juniors find it very hard to keep it separate. So are a lot of the product managers, because they do conflict quite often when it comes to what is UX or what is CX and what is product management.
Good question. I don't know. Well, I mean, it's always the trying to find the middle ground again. It's equally important to be able to take into consideration your business requirements and weight it as well with your user requirement at the end. So I don't think that they're necessarily going to have to conflict, both of them. They can be perceived as conflictual, but ultimately they can inform one another, to me. I think I see where you're coming from. I think I already encountered that in the past situation. I'm trying to remember how I exert myself from there, but I think it wasn't without tears and sweat, if I'm honest. I think it was like a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion, a lot of going back to the basics as well. A lot of all right, what are our objectives? So the alignment we talked about as well at the beginning, I think is really, really important. So if you're talking about two different things, if you have two different expectations about the future, then that might be harder to work jointly on that. So make sure that you can find a common ground and interest for both of these aspects, product management and UX. Ultimately, you want to serve the same outcome, the same goal. So if you can gather the troops and make them look all together in the same direction, that can help you. What do you think, the others?
Yeah, I think it's useful to have a healthy conflict. I think it's right for product managers to challenge the design side of things, and vice versa. I think it's right for the design team to be asking the questions of product management about what the priorities are and why, because their understanding of customers may not be as good as it can be. So getting that relationship right is absolutely essential. Involving that product manager in the design process, getting them involved in the design thinking workshops early on, such that everybody's starting from the same starting point and foundation to build that product on.
Yeah, I think in a couple of teams in Redgate as well, they actually kind of have a kind of a triangle diagram, and they basically the technical lead and the product designer and the product manager have a discussion about who's looking after what, and what kind of sits in the middle of the triangle. So what's kind of everyone deals with and what they deal with specifically, and the reasons why they deal with that as a kind of a negotiation type thing, which I thought was really, really interesting. I thought a really nice idea, actually, just to kind of, if the team feels like it needs a bit of clarity on who's looking after what, because they feel some things might be slipping, or whatever. That's a really nice way of kind of codifying things and making things clear.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, Rob, and Howard. It's been great listening to you. Before we close, I have a few things I want to talk about. We're still looking for speakers, so if you're interested, or if you know someone who's interested, please get in touch with us. We would love to host you. You can follow us on Ingeniously Simple. We are on Medium, Twitter, Instagram, and we will upload this talk on YouTube as well. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can search for Ingeniously Simple there. We are hiring, so if you're interested in a new role, we're hiring for a product designer and a senior product designer. More information is on the Redgate website, so feel free to have a look. And yeah, that's it. Once again, thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Howard, for hosting it. Thanks, Jeremy, Rob, and Sybil. It's not here, but thank you so much. This is really helpful. We will upload this, as I said, on YouTube soon. If you have any feedback, you can write to us on Twitter. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. See you next time, and have a good evening. Bye.